America, just after 8 o'clock last night in the House of Representatives, they suspended the rules in order to pass the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act of 2024, which would expand the child tax credit to $3,600 per child from the current $2,000 per child. It's also going to create low-income housing credits and restore research and development deductions. Now, keep in mind that this bill provoked frustrations from moderate New York Republicans due to exclusion of state and local tax provisions. However, the House Rules Committee heard those provisions separately this morning. Now, it's up to the U.S. Senate to pass the bill. However, as it stands right now, it doesn't quite seem like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is eager to take this bill up. So joining us now to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of this legislation is Brandon Arnold. He is the Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union. Brandon, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. All right. I want to pick apart some of the provisions in this bill. Now, I know it's going to be paid for by funded by the Employee Retention Act relief from COVID. But the price tag on it is supposedly $80 billion. But to play the devil's advocate here, we had Freedom Caucus member Congressman Ralph Norman on the show last night. And I proffered to him that the Tax Foundation estimated that this would actually cost around $1.5 trillion. And he said it might be even more than that. So is the truth somewhere in between? What do you think?
No, I think what they're looking at here is if we take this bill, which is a 2-year bill, and extrapolate the costs for a 10-year window, then we could be looking at much more significant costs. But the reality of the situation is this bill expires at the end of 2025. So it's a 2-year package here. And when it expires, it was intentionally done because it lines up with other expiring provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the Trump tax cuts of 2017. And there we're going to have a big knockdown, drag out fight in all likelihood. We'll see what the Congress looks like at that point. We'll see who president is at that time. But we're going to have a big fight one way or another in order to restore all provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, most notably the lower tax rates that have helped middle-class Americans and small businesses and the higher standard deduction. So this will be just another front in that large battle for lower taxes and a stronger economy.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of Republicans, including folks like Congressman Ralph Norman, Freedom Caucus, conservative fiscal hawks on the congressional side, were concerned about the sundowning of those Trump tax cuts. But on the flip side of things, with respect to the child tax credit, I think that it is a good thing to provide parents with a larger dollar amount for this. However, am I right? Is this extended to illegal immigrants?
There's no changes to the citizenship-based criteria that are in this bill. A lot of people are upset because obviously we have a problem at our southern border, and that's creating all sorts of problems across the country, really. And one of the areas where it can hurt the government is by drawing down more government programs. So I think there is a legitimate concern buried in there. But the fact of the matter is the provisions here that protect against illegal aliens claiming the child tax credit are the same as the 2017 Trump law, the exact same provisions. Those were not changed at all in this bill. So do we need an immigration bill? Do we need additional policies to deal with our southern border? Yes, but they're not addressed here. And just because this doesn't address a serious problem doesn't mean it's a good bill. We can't fix all the problems of this country with a single piece of legislation.
Wish we could, but thank you. Thank you very much for clarifying that. Okay, what do you think the fate of this bill is now that it's over in the Senate?
Well, that's where it gets really tricky because obviously we have Chuck Schumer as the majority leader who kind of likes the bill, but also wants to add that SALT deduction that you mentioned before. This is a gift to the state legislators in Albany, in Sacramento, in Annapolis, in those high tax blue states that love to jack up taxes on their residents. And they hope that the SALT deduction will keep them from running to Texas or Arizona or Florida or wherever. As we've capped that, people have actually had to pay their fair share of taxes in their state, far too much. And instead of complaining to their legislators, hey, lower our taxes because everybody's leaving, they just shell that bill off to the federal government, essentially. So the SALT deduction just fosters really, really bad tax policies, particularly in blue states. We need to eliminate it altogether. Schumer wants to increase it. Some Republicans from California and New York want to increase it. I'd rather see it eliminated altogether. Use that money instead for lower rates, a bigger child tax credit, and more pro-growth tax policy.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have a lot bigger problems than our state and local taxes here in California and places like New York as well. So we got to get to the root of the problem before we fix it superficially. We've just got about a minute left. I wanted to ask you about all of these companies who are shedding pieces of their workforce. Here in Los Angeles, we've got the LA Times, but I just took a quick list of companies that have been firing off of pieces of their workforce. UPS, Sports Illustrated, TechCrunch, PayPal, REI, Levi's, Macy's, Wayfair, the list goes on and on. Is this an indication that Bidenomics just isn't working?
Well, it's one of about a million indications that Bidenomics isn't working. We've seen so much data to that effect. But listen, the job market has been pretty strong over the past couple of years. It's been a little bit surprising how strong it's been. That's helped people weather the storm, at least in part, during these years of high inflation. Job markets are weakening. We see those companies laying off people, and I think there are danger signs on the horizon here that we are going to see a softer job market. How do we fix that? Well, there's no silver bullet, but this tax legislation will help that because it will encourage companies to expand, to invest in the United States of America, and to spend more money on things like innovation, research, development.
Right.
All those things are good for jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, my double stuffed Oreos have gone up by $1.30, and that's how I gauge the economy, and that does not look good for Bidenomics. Brendan, we appreciate you being here so much. Don't go anywhere, everybody. We have one of John's very own reporters joining us next from Just